So, wow, 4,000 subscribers. I never thought I'd get this far when I created this channel, yet here we are. So, before we begin this video, I'd just like to thank everyone who subscribed. It really means a lot to me, and I hope that I can continue to entertain you with my content in the future. So, when I was like 13, I wrote a shit ton of Phineas and Ferb fanfics. The most notable ones were the dark and edgy trilogy that I wrote, the Bitterness Trilogy. It was originally meant to take place in the second dimension. However, since the movie had not yet come out at the time, I just made up my own bullshit instead. I managed to write all 3 stories before the film came out, and, of course, there was no resemblance between the movie and the fics whatsoever. So I began saying that they took place in the third dimension instead. A couple months ago, I set up a poll asking what I should do when I hit 4,000 subscribers, and apparently you all wanted me to talk about these fanfics, so that's what I'm gonna do. Remember, you asked for this. The first story is called The Bitterness of Phineas Flynn. It begins with an unnecessary prologue featuring the villains being cryptic about their intent to kill a group of children. See, for some reason, all the adults, save for Emperor Heinz Doofenshmirtz, and most of the teens have mysteriously vanished, leaving a bunch of children to fight against the evil dictator. What happened to these missing people is never explained. Get used to things not being explained. The real beginning of the story has Ferb working on his new weapon. It's some sort of device that shoots out a rope that wraps around your opponent. Remember this, it's gonna be important later in this video. The Resistance sends Phineas and Ferb to fight Doof. So basically, they send 2 children barely older than 10 to fight a dangerous adult, all by themselves. What could possibly go wrong? Ferb uses his new weapon on Platyborg, rendering him unable to move. This annoys Doof, so he decides to kill Ferb. Fair enough, I guess. Also, there's this. Ferb fell for about 3 seconds, then landed with a small thud. There's a running gag in one of the episodes where whenever something falls into a pit, they comment that it was 3 seconds deep. So in other words, I chose a really inappropriate moment to reference that. So yeah, we begin the story by killing off one of the main characters. Phineas is depressed, the other canon characters are depressed, my friend's fan character that I got permission to use is depressed, my own fan characters are depressed, Phineas swears vengeance. Off to a good start so far. Oh yeah, these stories included a fan character named Jessie, who was created by a friend of mine. She was Ferb's long-lost twin sister who grew up on another planet and was struggling to adapt to Earth culture with humorous results. She was a fun character. My depiction of her, unfortunately, had little to no personality whatsoever, but then again, the same goes for everyone else in this fanfic. Her third dimension counterpart was never separated from Ferb and always lived on Earth, though of course I never actually bothered to touch upon this. So anyway, Phineas sneaks off to, I don't know, plot his revenge or something, and runs into 2 strangers, Mitch from the Chronicles of Meep, and a character I made called the Fox Emperor, who is basically Emperor Palpatine, but as a talking fox. Yes, really. Then, Mitch says this, "You see, you are actually an alternate version of someone. In fact, this whole place is an alternate dimension. Your counterpart is too kind for our liking, so I traveled to this dimension in hopes that you would be more, bully-like." Bully-like might not be the right description. Edgelord in the making seems a bit more accurate here. So Darth Mitchell and the Fox Emperor recruit Phineas to the dark side, and he is trained off-screen so that he can eventually kill Doof. Mitch and Fox's motives for doing so, like everything else in this series, are never explained. A month later, Eric, one of my fan characters, is trying to be relevant to the story. Eric was included because he was supposed to be Ferb's other best friend besides Phineas. So Eric is crying in his room when suddenly a spaceship appears. He rushed out of the Resistance hideout and stood, mouth open. There, in the backyard, was a space pod. A door on it opened and 3 figures walked out. A fox with a black cape, a tall alien man, and... Phineas? "Yes, Eric, it's me," said Phineas, reading Eric's mind. an ability he had developed after joining the dark side. I'm not sure why Phineas would need to be reading Eric's mind at that point, or how exactly he developed that ability. It's probably best not to question it. So another month passes, and Doof is just chilling in his house. Phineas and Eric break in and begin to attack him with lightsabers. It then turns out that Doof owns one as well. Just go with it. A thrilling fight scene happens, and then... oh gosh, this part. Before I read this, please keep in mind that this story was meant to be taken seriously. Finally, Phineas knocked Heinz's lightsaber out of his hand. Phineas pointed the blade at his enemy. "Don't move," the child said coldly. Heinz obeyed out of fear. "Now," said Phineas, "will you surrender or not?" "I won't surrender," said Heinz. "This is madness." "Madness?" Phineas responded fiercely. "This is Danville," he hollered, swinging his lightsaber directly at Heinz. Oh gosh. I was meme trash even back then. Doof, however, doesn't find it very funny and runs away in terror. Then we find out that Phineas has a crush on Isabella. Since they're on opposite sides now, he decides to try and recruit her to the dark side. She refuses, so he gives up and leaves. Phineas has a flashback about when Doof took over and is depressed. Then suddenly, Ghost Ferb! Mufasa shows Phineas his Christmas future, where Phineas and everyone else are dead because of his revenge, or something. Phineas tells Eric, who instantly believes him. The two sneak into the Resistance hideout so they can apologize to everyone, only to find out that the Fox Emperor is somehow already there.
How did you get back here before us?
How did we, Kronk?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
He somehow found out about Isabella's refusal to join the dark side and has decided to murder her. Phineas announces that he's leaving the dark side, and not Palpatine attacks him. He is defeated, Phineas ends up with a scar, and Darth Mitchell swears vengeance, even though he and his Emperor will never be appearing again, ever. Actually, now that I think about it, what was the Fox Emperor the Emperor of anyway? Oh well, whatever. Phineas and Isabella proclaim their love for each other, and Phineas and Eric are instantly forgiven by everyone. Phineas and Eric throw out their lightsabers, then go to Doof's house to apologize to the dangerous dictator that kills children and takes away their families for trying to kill the dangerous dictator that kills children and takes away their families. And what does Doof do? Absolutely nothing. Two of his worst enemies are standing right outside his door, unarmed, and he does nothing. The guy who killed Ferb in the beginning of the story, establishing himself as extremely dangerous, when presented with the opportunity to kill the other brother, decides to do his chores instead. What a fucking idiot! So then we get to the epilogue, where Phineas builds a machine that brings Ferb back to life, which makes this entire story completely fucking pointless. Not to mention that this machine is never used or even acknowledged again. This wouldn't even be the last time I would do something like this in my fics. Back then, I had a fetish for killing characters and bringing them back to life. However, this doesn't happen again in this series. So yeah, that was the bitterness of Phineas Flynn. The next story in this epic saga is called The Bitterness of Candace Flynn. We begin with a flashback from Candace about the day that Doof took over the entire tri-state area. Candace gets captured, and Doof convinces her to work for him with almost no effort whatsoever. Back in the present, Phineas and Ferb are sneaking into Doof's lair again. Like last time, they are sent there by themselves, because that went so well last time. Doof is confused that Ferb is alive again, but kinda just brushes it off. Through hilarious banter between Doof and Platyborg, it's revealed that Doof has a new agent who is going around and brainwashing people into supporting him. Phineas and Ferb go to find out who it is, and to their shock, it's Pencilneck herself. Candace tries to recruit them, but they refuse, so she threatens to kill them. You know, like sisters do. Actually, I'm an only child, so I wouldn't know. They report their discovery about Candace to their leader, an OC named LM. Oh gosh, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. His name is LM because it means world leader, and he's a leader. His full name is LM Jones, which I am now only realizing years later is only one letter away from. So Major Monogram makes a brief cameo to send the Resistance on a mission to turn Candace good again and rescue her. Not sure how they're expected to accomplish that exactly, but whatever. Also, where is Monogram exactly, and why is he leaving everything up to a bunch of kids? Why isn't he sending help? As usual, none of this is ever explained. Phineas and Ferb sneak into Doof's lair, and Candace suddenly gains the ability to sense when Phineas is near. This, of course, is never explained. Phineas begs Candace to come back to their side, but she refuses and knocks him out instead. Ferb manages to get Phineas and himself to safety. LM comes up with a plan to secretly install cameras in Doof's lair so that they can spy on him. So, of course, this means that Phineas and Ferb are sneaking into the lair yet again. Jeez, Doof really needs better security. We switch the focus over to Candace and Doof talking. Then suddenly, Stacy. Apparently she's been working for Doof the whole time as well, but Candace and the readers didn't know this until now. Candace once again senses that her brothers are near, and she and Stacy decide to go beat up some kids together. You know, like best friends do. So, Phineas and Ferb sneak in again, but this time they brought other people with them for once. They get caught pretty quickly, and after Phineas references yet another old meme, this time it was over 9,000, a fight breaks out between the children and animal cyborgs. Jessie also has a cool new weapon, which is a ninja star with retractable lightsaber blades, and it comes back to you after you throw it, like a boomerang. Which, to be honest, is pretty awesome. Stacy, on the other hand, has a whip, which she uses on Jessie. Jessie ends up with a scar over her eye, though the eye itself is perfectly fine. Candace starts shooting everyone with a stun gun. Eric once again tries to be an important character, only to immediately get knocked out. Not pleased with this, he decides to somehow wake up before any of the others do, just so he can tell everyone to run away. I forget if the mission was successful or not, but hey, at least Eric finally got to contribute something valuable to the story. That night, Phineas and Ferb both receive visions from Phineas's dead biological father, who says that Phineas needs to go and talk to Candace one more time, and this time he has to go alone. So, Phineas goes and talks to her. Doof, who is listening in, hears Phineas say he won't surrender. So he walks in and says, "Then perish." Keep in mind, this was written several years before that Obama meme existed. Doof begins to strangle Phineas to death, and this is when Candace finally decides to give a shit about her brother. She attacks Doof, grabs Phineas, and runs off. Phineas, who recovers quickly, forgives Candace for everything. They go to the Resistance hideout, where everyone is thrilled to see that Candace is on the side of good again. Candace and Alum are randomly shipped together, and everyone lives happily ever after. That is until the last story of the trilogy, The Bitterness of the Empire. Oh boy. It begins with another epic battle between the Resistance and Doof's cyborg army. Eric is mentioned twice in this prologue, and then is never mentioned in the series again. We can only assume that he faded out of existence after that scene. A moment of silence. But seriously, even that Tom dude from Lord of the Rings contributed more. Then we see Phineas and Ferb bringing supplies to a random citizen named Phineas Phoebus. He was supposed to be Phineas's long-lost uncle, that he was named after, and there's even a bit of foreshadowing. Unfortunately, I completely forgot to put that reveal in the story. We're then introduced to Irving, who in this universe is a creepy kid with an unexplained urge to kill anyone whose name is Phineas. Doof, of course, took advantage of this and recruited him. LM decides that he wants to flirt with Candace. He wants to give her flowers, but all the flowers in their town were apparently destroyed. My guess is that flowers were part of one of Doof's traumatic backstories, and at some point he declared war on them. Those poor, defenseless flowers. What did they ever do to him? So, Ella makes Candace a flower out of paper instead. She still appreciates the gesture. Then suddenly, Jeremy! In this universe, he's Candace's evil ex-boyfriend. Not that I have anything against him, I just thought evil Jeremy would be fun. Alum and Candace tell Jeremy to fuck off. Jeremy ends up contributing absolutely nothing to the story. But hey, at least he still contributed more than... that one OC. What was his name again? Candace senses that her brothers are in danger, and they rush back to the hideout. Phineas and Ferb, who are taking a nap, are about to be murdered by my platypus OC. Candace and Alum stop her, and she runs away. My platypus OC's name is Delilah. In the regular universe, she was Perry's ditzy partner. In fact, she was basically a platypus version of Lila Lollaberry, except that my character came first. Needless to say, I was pretty freaked out when I first saw the episode Delilah was in. Not only was she very similar to how I imagined Delilah, personality-wise, but her name is basically the last two syllables of Delilah. Was someone at Disney stalking me? Anyway, Perry and Delilah were originally meant to have more of a brother-sister relationship, but in the end, I couldn't resist the temptation to ship them. In this fanfics universe, they're both cyborg minions of Doof, and they're dating. Anyway, Doof gets mad that Delilah, or Platyborg 2.0 as she is referred to here, failed her mission, so he beats her up. The Platyborgs decide that they've had enough of Doof and want to join the good guys. Phineas encounters Doof building some kind of device and goes to investigate. Doof catches him and reveals that he killed Phineas's birth father. He goes to kill Phineas in the same way that he killed his father when Platyborg suddenly shows up to save Phineas. Platyborg reveals that he wants to join the Resistance, and Phineas is understandably suspicious. Ferb calls Phineas over his communicator, telling him that something's happened at Phineas Phoebus's house. Phineas and Platyborg rush over to find the house destroyed. Phoebus explains that Irving tried to attack him because he had Phineas in his name. Ferb uses a lie detector he invented on Platyborg and confirms that Platyborg is in fact on their side now. So, let me get this straight, Alum said. Platyborg and Platyborg 2.0 have turned good, and your old friend Irving has become a psycho killer. Phineas, Ferb, Platyborg, and Phoebus all nodded. Goodness, what a day, said Alum. Yeah, no kidding. Platyborg reveals that Platyborg 2.0 will now be working as a double agent for the Resistance. A few days later, Alum and Candace find out that Doof is planning to destroy a nearby town called Jeffville. See, because they live in Danville, and the creators of the show are named Dan and Jeff, Jeff being better known as Swampy. So they send Phineas to guard the city. Alone.
What could possibly go wrong?
Irving shows up and tries to kill Phineas, but Ferb stops him. This is when we find out that, for some reason, the name Ferb scares Irving. Again, this is never explained. After Irving runs away screaming, it turns out that this was all a distraction so that Doof could sneak past them. Doof uses his new device to blow up Jeffville, killing every single person in the town. He doesn't ever think to kill the people who are actively opposing him, but he sure has no problem killing random characters that we don't even know. Phineas blames himself for all those deaths and decides to commit suicide. Yes, I really went that far. He apparently has this allergy medicine that he takes by inhaling it, which he has to take because he's allergic to Stacy's perfume. Oh yeah, Stacy joined them at some point, apparently. However, there's also a fucking poison being kept right next to the medicine. It's called Dolores, no relation to the Harry Potter character, and it's also taken by inhalation. Phineas accidentally takes the poison instead. Fortunately, Ferb and Alum discover that he's been poisoned and just so happen to have an antidote on hand. Phineas tries to kill himself again the next day, this time by stabbing himself. Ferb stops him and convinces him not to kill himself, and everything is just hunky-dory after that. At least until Vanessa shows up. Vanessa asks for the Resistance's help, with dialogue that totally doesn't sound suspicious at all, and totally isn't ripping off Lion King 2. Alum decides to let her stay. Later that night, Vanessa lures Phineas outside with a device that replicates the voice of Phineas's dead father. Why she needed to sneak into the Resistance hideout for any of that if she was just going to do it outside, I don't know. Phineas is captured by the cyborgs, though Platyport 2.0 promises that she'll do whatever she can to help him. The others are shocked that Vanessa was a traitor. Yeah, what a shocking twist there. Ferb rescues Phineas with the help of Platyport 2.0. They get caught, and the final battle between the Resistance and the Cyborg Army begins. Meanwhile, Phineas and Irving battle each other on the roof with swords that are on fire. Which, let's be honest, is kinda badass. Now, remember that thing earlier with Ferb's device? The one that shoots out a rope that ties up the enemy? Ferb suddenly remembers that he has it, and only now decides to actually use it again. Doof is easily defeated. So basically, Ferb could have prevented everything that happened in this story if he had remembered that he invented this device. Why is everyone in this trilogy so fucking stupid? We switch back to Phineas and Irving. Irving falls off of the building and vanishes, while Phineas passes out from his injuries. Phineas wakes up in the Resistance's infirmary, where his siblings are there to wish him a happy birthday. We finally find out Phineas and Ferb's ages. Phineas is turning 13 in this epilogue, while Ferb and Jessie have already been 13 for a month. The series ends with the characters hoping that they'll someday find their parents. And so, the Bitterness trilogy concludes. At least until the sequel series, retelling of the first story from Ferb's perspective, TV show adaptation, Christmas special, and fanfiction of the fanfiction written by Jessie's creator, none of which were ever finished. Oh, and did I mention that the series has a TV tropes page?